Well, morning all, welcome to the Old Classic Car channel and welcome to the NEC for the 2024 Practical Classics Restoration Show. It is day 2 of this 3-day event and this is a very large car park, so we're going to head over to the main halls and just see what turns up. Ooh, lovely 1965 Morris Minor there, looking very, very trim indeed in the car park here. But I'm sure there will be many interesting cars here today at the NEC. It's a particularly brisk breeze, so I'm not going to spend too long here. So I think I will probably report back once we are over a little bit nearer the main exhibition halls. I think I'll probably do the same as I've done with previous NEC shows. I think I will photograph everything and then compile a video from that, rather than do a walk around, walking and talking as I go around. Often it's fairly chaotic. There's usually lots of background music, noise, tannoys, that kind of thing. Whereas this way I can pick and choose what features in the video, and hopefully it'll be the most interesting cars that will appeal to the followers of the Old Classic Car channel. So I think that is the plan for today. But the first priority is to get inside and have a nice cup of coffee and warm up a little bit. And to open this collection of 350 photographs at the NEC, we have this beautifully original Jowett Javelin. What a time warp car that is. Fantastic up on jacks, grille removed, and obviously a bit of work going on in that flat 4 engine. And here in the window is the original purchase invoice and receipt for this magnificent car. One Jowett Javelin standard saloon. There we go, so it's a standard version rather than the deluxe. The deluxe had a slightly different dashboard and a few extra mod cons, including a little tray for the rear seat passengers. But yeah, how great that survives. And here, first of several photographs featuring cars held in the auction area. And this is a 1966 Jaguar E-Type fixed head coupe, series 1.5, the 4.2 litre version of the early fixed head E-Type. And here we have a glorious TR6, and a big thanks to the owner for agreeing to put some of my flyers on his windscreen. That was fantastic. This is one of several cars to feature in this video, positioned within the Pride of Ownership area, the concours competition if you like, at this year's Practical Classics Restoration and Classic Car Show. Now, I'm sure there would have been a lot of interest in this fantastic old Mini, as it says there, a barn find original 1071cc Mini Cooper S. What a fantastic survivor car, what a great find that is, a Morris Cooper S. And these don't turn up every day either. This a convertible version of the good old Hillman Minx. What year is this one? I'm guessing about what, 1959, 1960, somewhere thereabouts I would have thought, but these convertible versions must be seriously rare now. And this is an incredible car. There's an information board there, so I think that could probably describe it better than I can. A 1950 Cadillac flower car. What an incredible find. I suggest just pause the video for a moment and have a quick read of that summary there, because it really is something really unique, especially in this country. And here on the Austin 7 Club stand we have a beautiful little SpeedX. SpeedX was a company in the 50s and the 1960s that could sell you all manner of tuning parts suitable for your Austin 7, even a complete body as you see here, and those beautiful cast aluminium wheels. The Bond Bug Club are out in force as well. Here's a photo early on day 2, Saturday, which is the day I went, and 3 Bond bugs there. How fantastic do they look. Really early doors, the show hadn't yet opened, so that's why it's quite quiet, but trust me, it got quite busy not long after this photograph was taken. Bit of work going on here on what appears to be a garage find MG midget of the probably early 1970s, I would have thought, this particular car. Now look at this, first of several photos of vehicles I saw on the Alfa Romeo Owners Club stand, this beautiful little drop side van, and look at the grille on the front of that, how stylish is that for a van? What a real treat to see this one. Looks like it's almost restored, the cab is in primer, the rear body has been painted, Yeah, lovely. And look at that, the driver's eye view, the forward control seating position you can see there, and a lovely little twin cam Alfa Romeo engine. Yeah, fantastic. I wasn't expecting to see one of those little twin cams in there. What a great little van that is, and I love how Romeo is stamped into the door panel there on the passenger side. Very, very cool. And talking of cool old vans, we have this, the Bedford HA van, beloved of so many companies throughout the 1970s. British Telecom, and I'm pretty sure British Gas had quite a fleet of these as well. But this is a very rare survivor, especially in this fantastic condition. And one of many barn find style cars on display this year at the NEC Restoration Show is this glorious Wolseley. Now this could be pre-war, late 1930s, or it could possibly be just after the war. It's the kind of car that was produced either side of the Second World War. Still got its illuminated Wolseley badge as well. And two Austin J40s, the Joy 40 pedal cars. One very, very unrestored, as you can see there, and a lovely restored example just in the background, sat on some very appropriately liveried wooden boxes. And another Jowett. How nice is this? This is a Jowett Bradford. Now some of these were sold with rear side windows from new. Others, enterprising owners, probably put their own windows in and bolted in some rear seats. I'm not quite sure what the story is with this one, but either way, what a bonny example that is. And here's an interesting after and before shot of a Rover 200 series car from the 1980s. Clearly one side has all been polished up to make it look like new, and the right hand side is how the car was found. That's a really neat display, and just one example of these sort of working demonstrations that you see at this unique event. Oh, a lovely old Hillman here, the Super Minx in convertible form. You don't see many good ones of these around now. Yep, two-door convertible, very, very practical classic there. And yeah, that's really swish, I do like that. Now we're back to the auction area. We saw that E-Type a moment ago, and this lovely MG was also in there. This is an MG SA Charlesworth Open Tourer of 1937, and that interesting grey car alongside it. We will have a closer look at that a little later on in this video. We're over on the Mercedes Club stand now, and a beige immaculate example of the Mercedes-Benz 190E, the four-door Mercedes-Benz saloon. Very, very smart example that is as well. Back into the auctions, and we've got an interesting Beetle here. You don't see many fuel-injected VW Beetles. This is one of the proper Carman cabriolets, left-hand drive. I think they were all left-hand drive with a glass rear window. Yeah, and that's in really good condition and in excellent company as well. There's quite a few other classics there in the background. And here a lovely Humber Scepter. This belongs to a follower of the Old Classic Car channel. I had a chat with the owner of this one. This car dates to 1967. Great stuff. The Standard 8, I had to include a photo of this. As you know, we've got a 1956 example of one of these, and this is a similar age, our CJ981, also on its original registration number, and great to see this one on the Standard Motor Club stand. And now we're over on the Skoda Club, and look at this Octavia. These are really, really nice. I think these are really unusual looking cars. You could also get the estate and the van version of these, but yeah, this is the two-door saloon. How great to see that. Classic Renault action here, and we have a Renault 4 demonstrating the excellent engine accessibility offered by that forward hinged bonnet. And yeah, it's actually quite easy to work on that. A lot easier than our old 4CV, that's for sure. In the background is a BMC J4 van. There are quite a few of these Sunbeam Lotuses on display on the club stand. This was probably my favourite. Many of them are silver and black, but this is a really eye-catching colour scheme, I think, in silver and sort of like a light blue metallic. Really, really nice, and some great Marshall lamps on the front of this one as well. So yeah, lovely, lovely car. and perched on top of the roof of a Volvo 145, the estate version of the 140, was this lovely old sign inviting prospective purchasers to have a test drive in a brand new Volvo. How this sign has survived at all is just incredible, but yeah, that was a real nice thing to see. Really neat, these little accessories. And one of my favourite cars of the entire event was this magnificent Rover, a Rover foursome drop head coupe, no less. 20 horsepower car, 2.5 litre overhead valve, 6-cylinder engine under that long bonnet. And how stylish is that? There's a rear 3/4 view showing the folding roof arrangement on this particular car, and I'll also throw in a photo of it a little later in the day with the roof folded. It's just such a nice looking car and in fantastic barn fresh condition. I think you would probably describe that one as. There we go, later in the day, the roof down now, and you can see the really well preserved interior, the beautiful wooden door cappings, the leather seats, that dashboard. Really nice quality car. And yes, I would very happily offer that one at home here at OCC HQ. Lovely. And this was an interesting one. Someone's been at the Meccano set and produced a sort of a cutaway example, a diagram I suppose in 3D of how the structure of the P6 actually hangs together, because of course all the panels on a P6 are unboltable off and onto the central sort of skeleton frame, if you like, which is shown there. Next up, classic Reliant. This is the Reliant Sabre 6, and that fiberglass body actually can trace its roots back to one of the 50s Ford specials, the Ashley 1172. That's what this particular body shell was based upon. Fans of Top Gear will recognise this. This is Oliver, Mr. Richard Hammond's famous Opel Kadett, restored at least once, maybe twice even, since it came back to the UK from Africa, and looking splendid here, close to the Practical Classic stage. And a bit of a work in progress here, definitely. Ford Consul Capri. The good thing about this show is there are so many working demonstrations of cars in pieces, cars being worked upon, restoration tips and all that kind of thing. And this shows you what the stripped body shell looks like once it's just been painted. And talking of stripped vehicles, we have this on the Austin Countess Car Club stand. A just post-war Austin 16. Clearly this one is being subjected to a full nut and bolt restoration, and that will be fantastic once it's all complete and then back together and on the road again. Everything is just looking like new. And just to show the variety of cars you get at events like this, we've got a clutch of Corvettes there, and in the background some various Messerschmitt bubble cars. So yeah, real variety of cars at this huge event. And don't forget there is also the big classic car show held at the NEC every November. But back to smaller vehicles, and here a lovely example of the Austin A35 van. And staying with BMC, a fine example of the Wolseley 1500 showing off its engine. These were based loosely around the Morris Minor floor pan and shared the rack and pinion steering, but this has the larger B series engine under its bonnet at 1489cc. And here a side-on view of a Porsche 968 being worked upon. I think this was the only example of these that I saw this year at the NEC. This was sort of an updated version of the Porsche 944. Next up in this look back at the 2024 Practical Classics Restoration Show, we have this, a slightly grubby, surprisingly grubby looking Ford Sierra RS Cosworth. This is the RS 500 version, I think, which was the daddy or the top of the tree, and it's in as found condition by all the accounts. Yeah, most of them are all shined and restored and looking lovely, as is this beautiful Mark I Austin Mini. These were originally badged up as the Austin 7 before being switched to the Austin Mini badging after just a short time, but this one looks better than new almost. Look how shiny it is under that bonnet. Absolutely incredible. Now this is a bit of me, a nice big lazy 50s saloon, in this case a Vauxhall E-Series Velox. This was sort of a mid-range car, I suppose, 6 cylinders. You had the Wyvern, which was a 4-cylinder car as well, and the Cresta, which was sort of one of these but with extra trim and often in two-tone paint jobs. And there's a driver's eye view of this particular Velox. You've got a column gear shift on the left-hand side, just visible there, left of the steering wheel, and a very nice period radio as well. But yeah, very, very nice bench seat as well. So yeah, nice car. Now here's something you don't see all that often, the Lancia Y10. Who remembers these from the 1980s? There must be very few survivors of these still around, and I like the way that the spare wheel is stored above the engine, so small is the engine in these particular cars. And a Land Rover. There were quite a few Land Rovers and Range Rovers on display this year. This is quite an early car. This is a Series 1. This one dates to about 50, I think, early 1950, this particular example, petrol engine, and very, very nice indeed, with the lights behind the mesh grille. And who doesn't like a good Saab? And I'm a big fan of old Saabs. This is a 1959 Saab 93B, and it has the GT750 engine under its bonnet, 2-stroke and left-hand drive. Like I say, there are 350 photographs in this particular compilation, but many more cars actually feature. And here we've got 2 examples of the Frisky Sports. One with its, well, no roof at all, and the other with its folded roof in the raised position. So one sort of almost restored, and the one on the right presumably fully restored. Always interesting to see the Frisky Club stand, and we'll see more of that a little later. And here, head-on view of a mildly patinated Citroen H van. No rot through, but from what I can see there, just a bit of surface rust. And over here in Vauxhall Corner, we have a magnificent Vauxhall Ventura, and looks like there's a bit of work being done to the front brakes. Maybe it's had new calipers fitted. Hey, look, well, that looks particularly shiny. So yeah, a bit of work going on the front end, and like I say, there are lots of sort of working demonstrations on various car club stands at this particular event. Now over to Volvo section, and we have a 6-cylinder Volvo 164. It has some interesting looking LED headlamps, but apart from that, it looks really cool, and I do like that, and followers of the channel will remember I did dabble with one of these just a couple of years ago, a fuel injected 164E. Now a bit of Triumph action and a trio of wonderful post-war Triumph Roadsters. Of course, many people watching this video will remember the Bergerac TV series, and he drove a car just like that. Classic Volvo PV544 is next, and yeah, I really rate these cars. We ran a pale blue one of these a few years ago, and it was a really great car to drive, coils sprung all round, and it drove way more modern than its 40s inspired styling would suggest. These were based on a 40s Ford apparently. And a couple of classic rally cars here. We've got a Chevette in the foreground and an Opel Manta alongside it. Now this is what happens when you remove your rear quarter panel. This is an Opel Monza GSE with its rear wing panel cut away, and you can just see how rot can busily wreak havoc behind the scenes without you even knowing. So presumably this car will go on to be restored, hopefully, because they're not all that common now. And look at this lovely little Ford Pop 103E with extra lamps on the front, bonnet up, showing off its 1172cc side valve engine, and a nice roof rack on that one as well. That's something we see on quite a few of the cars actually at this particular show, and yep, that's really good to see. And talking about work in progress, we have this all steel mini estate from probably about 67 or 1968, about that kind of era. It was one of these that I first learned to drive on. Mum had an all-steel mini estate, and yeah, very similar to this car, although hers was getting a bit rusty in places. And next up, a slice of classic Rover with the Rover P5B Coupe, a 3.5 litre V8 powered car. Earlier cars were powered by Rover's old 3 litre straight 6. over to Fiat World, and we have a Fiat Strada. I think this is probably the 130 TC. This was a souped up version with alloy wheels, tuned engine, wheel arch extensions, spoilers, all that kind of thing to give it a bit of the boy racer vibe. And yeah, very, very rare survivor, that one now. Now we're back over in the auction hall area, and this is a close-up of the mascot and radiator badge of a lovely, just post-war Jaguar 2.5 litre saloon, and it was a car I was really, really taken with, and I could have been very, very tempted had my pockets been deep enough for that one. Here's a nice little bonny car, S612XAT, Fiat 126, or possibly one of the Polski Fiats, the Polish assembled versions of the Fiat 126, with a little 650cc engine hung out at the back. The Ford E83W van. These are, I'm very fond of these. This one looks like it may have the slightly smaller diameter pickup wheels on it. But yeah, these were introduced in 1938 and built all the way through to 1957. I'm guessing this is probably sort of early 50s example, Irish registered, and 2 Volvo P1800s here. The one in the background is an early Jensen bodied car with the cow horn bumpers, and the car closest to the camera is a much later example, bodied by Volvo and with these straighter bumpers. Now, this was on, I think this was on the Morris register stand perhaps, or certainly around there. Morris 8 Series E, a 4-door saloon, and it's got what was actually a very popular conversion, a headlamp conversion to the 7-inch circular Lucas lamps. The original lamps, which we'll see later in this video, were sort of slopey lamps built into the front wings. And here we have the Midget and Sprite Club. Quite a big display they had, and in the foreground a bright yellow Midget 1500 up on ramps, so maybe an oil change was planned for the Triumph engine that lurks beneath that bonnet, who knows. But yeah, nice little assortment of cars there. A couple of classic Ford Cortinas. You can always find Cortinas at a show like this. 2 Mark IIIs, both with vinyl roofs. The one in the background has got a white vinyl roof with a full-length sunroof. So very dashing indeed. What's the badge on the wing? I can't quite make that out. But yeah, 2 very shiny examples. There were a number of these wedgy Lotuses in evidence as well. I've got the information sheet pasted into the top corner of the photograph there. 1972 Lotus Elite Coupe prototype, driven personally by Colin and Hazel Chapman. Colin Chapman, of course, set up the Lotus cars back in the 1950s. And if you fancy the car to buy, how about this? A 1959 left-hand drive Carman Gear Coupe, yours for £42,000. Looks like a very, very bonny example indeed. A number of Transits were spotted as well within the halls at the National Exhibition Centre this year. This XXX liveried 4-wheel drive Mark II Ford Transit is in the colours of a race support vehicle. XXX, of course, sponsored many racing cars, saloon cars back in the 70s, including the Dolly Sprints, the Triumph Dolomite Sprints. Now this was a really impressive display. Work underneath a Morris Marina van with added side windows. But this was just a great example of how much effort goes into creating some of the club stands that appear at the Restoration Show. So my hat is removed to all the people who make the effort to take cars and vehicles and display at this particular event. Many people go down on the Wednesday before the show weekend itself, so it's a real time commitment as well as everything else. So yeah, great stuff, and great to see so many cars being worked on and demonstrations of restoration techniques. Now we're over at the All Sorts Club, and a very jolly looking Austin A35 2-door saloon on Ross style wheels. Back to classic Skodas here, and we have a 1990 Skoda Rapid Coupe. Now, what are we looking at here? This is the mighty power plant of the Jaguar E-Type Series 3, the 5.3 litre V12 engine. 4 mighty Stromberg carburetors there, and lots of plumbing to keep them all in check. Yeah, plenty of polishing to do there to keep that looking just as good as it is there. And we're back to classic Fords again, and a Consul Capri in two-tone grey. Various mini-base cars next. In the foreground, a bright yellow, the Grit bin. This is a Tichy, mini-powered, and alongside that, a Nomad on a Q registration plate. Who remembers these coming over from East Germany when the wall came down? This is a Trabant, the two-stroke Trabant here in Combi Estate form. And elsewhere I spotted this. Now this is an RS2000 Escort based on the Mark II, and I think this has the X-Pack conversion kit fitted to it. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I think those flared arches, as you can see there, is the factory offered X-Pack kit, which makes it pretty rare. Now, if you've been following the channel for a while and you saw the commercial vehicle show video that I put up in 2023, you may remember I did a video of this particular Mercedes spotted in the car park outside. This is a rear-engine Merc Mercedes 130 from 1934, and what a stunning little car that is. Also very, very eye-catching is this beautifully restored minivan. Very, very nice indeed, still with its original pressed body colour grille as well, unique to the vans and the pickups. If you saw the collection of New Zealand photographs that I put up a little while ago, you may remember seeing a Herald pickup, and this is very, very similar, almost identical in fact. Someone has made this. Triumph didn't offer a pickup version of the Herald. They did with the previous Standard 10, funnily enough, but I think someone has clearly made that for themselves. And look at this beautiful example of the Jaguar S-Type. These were available auto or manual gearbox, 3.4 or 3.8 litre versions were offered. Sporting Bears were offering numerous dream rides throughout the course of this weekend, and here we have a Lotus Europa in the old JPS Lotus colours, the John Player special colours as used on the Formula 1 cars back in the 1970s. So that's a really cool looking car. And another Transit. I think this was the oldest Transit spotted at this particular NEC event. This one on a K plate, so about 70, 71, that kind of era. And yeah, very, very unusual van. Looks to be in good condition now, so a lick of paint and it'll be good to go. And talking of classic vans and light commercials, we have this, a Jowett Bradford van. No windows on the sides of this one. But yeah, how cool is that? Bonnet off, wheels off, bit of work going on. And yeah, that is quite a rare vehicle. Probably late 40s or the beginning of the 1950s will be the date for this one. Built at Idle in Yorkshire. 400 FS is a Jensen Interceptor restoration project. This was in the auction and I think it sold for just over £6,000, so it'll be a great car when done, but plenty of work to do. The big Chrysler V8 engine under that bonnet. Very, very cool car indeed. And how about these? You don't see these very often at all. The Renault 10. Occasionally we see Renault 8 at a local show, but it's a long time since I've seen a Renault 10, and just look how much overhang there is forward of the front wheels. Very, very distinctive looking car. And we are over in Citroën Corner, and a fairly early Ripple bonnet, Citroën 2CV. So what date is this? Sort of late 1950s, maybe 1960s, somewhere around about there I would have thought. Looks like a really good, well-preserved car. And back to the auction area, classic car auctions, 607 BCR, a Ford Consul Mark II convertible. You don't see many of these. Yeah, usually saloons, but very few of these open top examples around now. An S3 Bentley parked alongside it. Middlebridge stand now, and we've got 3 examples of the Middlebridge Scimitar. Of course, This was the Reliant scimitar basically. Middlebridge took over the rights to the design and put it into production throughout the 1980s. Now look at this beauty, 774 HOD, a low-line Ford Zodiac from 1961. This one sold for £27,000. It was beautifully turned out. As you can see in the background, quite a variety of cars went through this particular auction, and we'll see some more of those a little bit later. Here we have a Crayford Cortina, one of several such vehicles on display this year. This one looks to be in really excellent condition as well. Oh, back to vintage times now. This magnificent vehicle is a Daimler, presumably 1920s or possibly the beginning of the 1930s. But yeah, looks like a long-term restoration project for somebody there. Would be wonderful when it's all pieced back together. ALE 425B is a 1964 MG 1100. So the engine is very similar to the contemporary Mini Cooper in these. Twin carburetors, perky cam, and this has the 12G206 cylinder head, if I remember correctly. Now we are over on the Ford Corsair Owners Club stand, as you can see, and here we have a barn fresh Corsair. This was a 2000E, the executive model, so this was the posh one. And hopefully this one is in restorable condition. It doesn't look too bad from here, but maybe the story underneath is a little different. Back to classic Alphas, and here we have a 2000 GTV on an M plate. And here's a lovely, beautifully turned out example of a two-door Ford 100E, modified with different wheels, presumably modified a bit under the bonnet, but yeah, very sharp looking car, and little quarter bumpers, replacing the usual full width bumper that these would have had when they were new. If you like this kind of thing, please think about subscribing to the channel. There are hundreds and hundreds of videos on here now. Okay, we're back to the Skoda Club stand, and a rare surviving example of the Skoda Favorit Estate. Good grief, when did I last see one of these? Probably at the NEC last year. That's the only time I ever see one of these now. The classic Rangy. Here we have a Coventry registered P38 Range Rover, and this must be a very early one. And seeing that sign on the left, CVC register, makes me wonder if this was like a factory pre-production car or press car or something like that. If you know anything more about any of the cars featured here, please pop a note into the comments. And look at this, a super shiny, immaculate version of the Marina 1300 Super. This was the plush one, a few extra little bits of bright work on it, shiny mirrors, strips around the arches, nice wheel trims, a vinyl roof. So this was quite the posh, comfortable version of the Morris Marina. And talking of 70s cars, we've got this immaculate, glistening Series 3 Land Rover. Couple of great scimitars here. We've got a Scimitar GTE in the foreground, an SE5, and next to that a GTC convertible. If I featured your car in this video, please pop a note in the comments and say hello. If I missed your car out, sorry about that. I tried to cover as many as I can, probably 400 odd cars feature in this particular upload, but obviously I couldn't get them all in. And here's a fantastic early example of the Austin Allegro. This one on an L registration. There were several Allegros there, and a few of them appear throughout the course of this video. Marques body shell is next in fiberglass. Now, is this an unused body shell, or is it a used body shell that's been stripped mid-restoration? I think it's probably the former. My guess is this body shell has never been used. Will it ever be built up into a car, I wonder? Here we have a Mark II Escort. No, I don't. We have a Mark I Ford Escort. I was thinking of something else. And this has got a bit of a history. This is a twin cam car, originally driven by Roger Clark, no less. So a very, very historic rally car, this one. And presumably it will be restored at some point. But yeah, it'd be great to see that one back out again. And here, a rare MGA Roadster. This is the twin cam version. You can just see the cam covers there poking out under the bonnet, and it has those beautiful Dunlop wheels with the centre knock-ons, which just look absolutely fantastic. Very, very unusual. Rare car, that one. X19 corner, and the two cars in the background I think we've featured on the channel before, but look at this one. Someone has shoehorned a 3-litre V6 engine into the back of this blue example, hence the much wider rear arches and tyres, so that must be quite a handful, I would have thought, and getting that engine in there must have been quite exciting. Now we're back on the Merc Club stand, and a very, very shiny example of the 2.3 16 valve, the Cosworth engine version, and this was Merc's rival to the BMW M3. And we have quite a few Rover Group cars in this particular video. They were very well represented at the Restoration Show this year. This is a lovely little cabriolet, very, very sharply turned out little car. Oh, the Cadbury's Cream Egg. This reminds me a bit of the Outspan Mini Oranges that were produced in the 1970s, and I think this one was based on the Bedford Rascal. If you pause the video and have a little read, hopefully you can make out what it says on that information board just at the bottom left there. But yeah, what a great looking vehicle that is. And here we have a classic MX-5, or possibly the UNOS Imports. The badge on the front makes me think it's probably an import, but basically it is a Mark 1 with the pop-up headlamps, identical pretty much to the car we've got sat here. But yeah, this one looks to be in really good condition with an added strut brace going across the top of the two suspension towers. There are also quite a few Rover P6s at this particular event. I'll feature some of them here, but I couldn't get them all in. Here we've got what looks to be a bit of a work in progress early example of a Rover 2000. Very bonny little Mini Clubman here, the 1275 GT, and this was kind of the modern era version of the Mini Cooper that came before. And this one's got those Dunlop alloy wheels on, very, very smart indeed. I remember my uncle's GTM, a mini-based kit car that he had in the 70s, had the identical wheels to that. And staying with small cars, but even smaller than the Mini, we have this gaggle of Trojan three-wheelers. What do we have here? We have Midas's. I know the white car was particularly high mileage, several 100,000 miles I think on that one. But yeah, two great examples of the Mini powered Midas, fiberglass bodywork there. Very tunable, as all A-series cars are, so these probably go quite well indeed. I imagine they are quite light. And when did you last see one of these? The Giugiaro designed Yugo Sana, produced by Zastava back in the 1980s and possibly into the early 90s. But yeah, very, very rare sight here in the UK. There must be only 2 or 3 of those left, I'm sure. Very, very rare car. And you don't see these too often either. This is in the Sporting Bears section of the Dream Rides, and it is the Citroën XM. Very, very interesting car. Very, very sleek, low frontal area, of course, when aerodynamics was all the rage back in the 1980s and into the 1990s. A couple of classic Jags in the auction now. In the foreground is a red 3.8. This one sold for around the £16,000 mark. The white later car alongside, I think that's a 240. A bit of a project, that sold for around £2,000, I think. Now this is an unusual car, and it's been a while since I last saw one of those. CLB 801B is a 64 Morgan Plus 4 Plus. This was Morgan trying to do something different compared to their regular cars, and they didn't sell many of these. I think probably most Morgan buyers were quite, I think they probably knew what they liked and they liked what they knew. And these didn't sell in huge numbers at all, which makes any survivors really rare things to see now. Well, yeah, that's quite a nice looking car. Let me know in the comments what you think of that. Would you have bought one of those, or would you prefer a standard Morgan that we all know so well now? Over in the barn find display area, we've got this 2-door Ford Escort. I can't remember if this is a 1300 or a 1600 Sport. with the RS alloy wheels on it. But yeah, looks like a great project for someone. Maybe this time next year it'll be all restored up and looking minty. And talking of mint cars, how about this? Immaculate pale blue Vauxhall Viva HC. What a sharp looking car that is. It's a shame we don't see more of these around. Occasionally we get one this colour at the Crewe Heritage Centre, and there is a nice red one also turns up at many of the morning meets that we go to. And there always had to be a few MGBs in this particular collection. This one dates to 1967 and has clearly been prepared for racing. It's got perspex covers over the headlamps, quick release bonnet pins, and I'm sure many modifications under that bonnet. And how about this? A Cavalier Saloon, and it's the SRI, the sporty one, the fuel-injected version, the Cavalier SRI. Occasionally you see the hatchback versions, but very rare to see these notchback saloons. So I definitely had to take a few photographs of this one while I was walking past. And look at this. This must be pretty base spec Metro, the Austin Mini Metro. It doesn't even have the passenger door mirror, no head restraints either. So this must be pretty much bottom of the range, and probably makes it one of the rarest of all now, I would have thought. Now, this was a lovely old car. As you know, pre-war cars are very popular here at OCC HQ. This beautiful Rover 10 looks like it needs a bit of TLC, but it appears to be in good hands. So hopefully one day this one will be back on the road. The registration is VN6934, and this particular car was put on the road way back in March of 1935. I love those little stickers in the back window there. We've been there and back again. See you later, overtaker. It's her chassis that counts. I see. So, yeah, what a great old survivor that is. There it is again. Presumably the front wing is around for it somewhere. But yeah, these are very nice looking cars. I do like Rovers of this era, the P1 and the later P2, and that glorious drop head that we were looking at before. Really, really nice stuff. Carrying on this walk around the NEC, we have another classic Ford. This a Consul Classic 4-door saloon, and unusually this is an import. It's a left-hand drive. So where has this come in from? Has it been away in a nice dry warm country, which is why it survived so well? Answers on the postcard please. More classic Saab action here. This one's on a 64 registration, bonnet raised, showing off its two-stroke engine. We've got a close-up there of the badging on the front wing, telling us this is the Gran Turismo, or the GT850, the sporty one. So yeah, I mean, these were very popular in rallying back in the 1960s. Eric Carlson and such like rallied those often. Now we have a couple of classic Morgans. CHJ 169 is closest. That's a Morgan Plus 4 drop head coupe, not just your regular soft top. This one dates 1952, and it was actually the Olympia Motor Show car, so quite a historic vehicle in the Morgan world, I would have thought. And when did you last see one of these? This is a real rarity. The Mitsubishi Colt Sapporo GSR from 1979. Designed as quite a swish, well-equipped coupe for the 70s and 80s businessmen, I assume. That's how I imagine who these particular cars were aimed at. And here is a better look at the Vauxhall Opel Manta next to the HSR Chevette there. Very, very nice cars, these Mantas. Brings back memories of Jimmy McRae and Russell Brooks, who used to rally these back in the days before Group B took over. But yeah, these are real fun cars. Now, thanks to Anthony, he also displayed one of the OCC flyers under the bonnet of his very original and very, very well-travelled Morris Minor 1000. Various mods in evidence under the bonnet of this one. But yeah, this one gets all over and it goes abroad quite regularly. So yeah, it's great to see this one. We often come across this one at various car shows that we go to. Several different classic Fords here. Obviously we've got a Mark I Escort Mexico in the foreground, a much modified 100E, which we'll have a proper look at a little bit later on in this video. And just poking into the background there, a Ford Escort Estate. And there are quite a few of these BMW era Minis. The early ones are starting to be quite collectible now. And of course you have to remember that this basic design, what you're looking at here, was actually penned largely by Rover before BMW took the company over, and then they sort of continued with the work that Rover had started. So yeah, this was very much the direct descendant of the classic Minis. And now classic Triumph time, and we have a Herald Estate on optional 5.5J wide wheels, and it has Herald across the front of the bonnet, so it's a fairly early example of the breed. Later they just said Triumph across the front. Oh, good old Amazon. This one's been modified a little bit. It's on a G plate, so it's a fairly latish example, although it has got some early parts on this one. The grills are earlier and the badges on the front wing are slightly earlier as well. But that's a great looking car. Very, very smartly turned out indeed. Many, many classic Range Rovers were to be found in the auction area. I didn't photograph them all, but this was one of the tidier of them all. JBH 601V classic Range Rover, presumably with a 3.5 V8 under the bonnet, and the old Lucas Square 8 lamps on the front bolted to the top of the bumper. Now, I do like oddball stuff, and I know you do as well, and this is an M-Reg Wartburg Knight, the old two-stroke Wartburg. And survivors of these must be very, very thin on the ground now, and in the background you can just make out the front end of the Trabant Combi. This is a rare one. I thought this was a Mitsubishi Starion, but this is actually a Chrysler Conquest wide-body 2.6 turbo. So it's sort of a mishmash between the Dodge Challenger and the Mitsubishi Starion apparently. So this must be a super rare car, especially here in the UK. It dates to 1989. Oh, nice modified Jaguar E-Type build here, shown on the trailer. This has been inspired by the lightweight racers of the 1960s, and it's got those beautiful Dunlop wheels, centre lock wheels on this as well. And yeah, that'll look fantastic once it's finished. Really sleek looking car. And how about this, an immaculate Toyota Starlet. These are very popular with the rally boys and girls now, rear wheel drive and a very tunable little engine. So they go very well in classic car rallying apparently. So to see a road original spec car, yeah, that's got to be rare now. And another second example to feature here of the Bedford HA van, contemporary of course of the Vauxhall HA Viva, and I think probably shared all the front end panels. The whole lineup of Rover SD1s here. I think most of them are probably Vitesses, although in the distance in the background there you can just about make out a pale green car, which is a V8S. And we'll have a closer look at that one in just a moment. Ah, there's that Escort Estate, the Mark IV Ford Escort Estate. Very, very clean car. We've seen this one at several of the classic car shows that we've been to. I'm not quite sure which ones, possibly Western Park, somewhere like that. But yeah, really smartly turned out car. Non-original wheels, but otherwise looks pretty much standard. And we are now looking at the Racing Puma Club. These were quite neat looking cars, based on the Ford Pumas, but much wider arches. And they only made in limited numbers these, and these are really sought after now. Very, very rare. We'll have another look at one of these a little bit later in this video. Ah, there we go. There's that SD1 that I was talking about. This is a V8S. That's a model that wasn't produced for very long at all. This one's on a V plate, so about 1979 or 1980 or thereabouts. So it looks like a bit of a project, 3.5 litre under the bonnet of that one. But a very worthwhile project, I would have thought. Maybe next year we'll see it all finished. Now, in the auction area, there was this glorious Mark I Jaguar, the Jaguar 3.4 Saloon. I don't quite remember what this one sold for, but it didn't seem like a huge amount of money, and it looked to me in quite nice condition, actually. So yeah, I would definitely offer that one a home. And next to it is an E28 535i BMW. Recently resprayed is this Reliant. This is the Reliant Regal, which was the basis of the Supervan 3, of course. So yeah, this one looks like it's almost finished. We've got a few clips there holding the headlining in place, windscreen out, presumably taken out because it's recently been resprayed. And here we have a gold Lotus Elite, one of the Lotus wedges of the 70s. And you can see that really distinctive strip down the side of the body. That's where the upper and the lower halves of the two body parts were actually joined together. It's a fiberglass body, and that's where the join is, under that seal that runs down the centre side of the car. And talking of fiberglass coupes, we have this, the Reliant Scimitar, the SE6 version of the Scimitar GTE. 79 or 1980 is the approximate date of this one. Now this beauty here, I'm not sure if you can call it a beauty actually, we're back on the Mercedes-Benz club stand, is a recreation or tribute car to an original racer of the early 1970s. The original car had a 6.8 litre V8. This one makes do with a 5.6 litre V8, and that must go very well. Now if you saw my Tatton Park video in 2023, you might remember seeing this car running and listening to it. This is a V8 standard. It must be pretty much a unique survivor of one of these late 30s cars. Beautiful V8 burble, a bit like the Pilot. Very, very quiet engine, but a lovely burble out of the back, out of the exhaust pipes. Classic Volvo time now, boxy Volvo. This is the Volvo 145, the estate car version of the 140 saloon. The big safety bumpers, of course, was a thing by this point in time. Not the most elegant of bumpers, I think it's fair to say, but a really practical car, a very, very useful car indeed, that one. And there's always a few XJS's at these events. In the background there's a white XJSC, the sort of cabriolet version offered by Jaguar, and in the foreground a slightly faded V12 on a G plate, bit of lack appeal on the roof, but actually I quite like seeing it looking very original like that. I quite like that. We're back to the side valve Ford club stand, and another, this is a beautiful example of a 103, a proper show car. And look at that front wheel. That is a Bellamy wheel. This was an optional wheel sold to Ford special builders in the 1950s. 15-inch diameter rims. These were often fitted to Falcons and Ashleys, that kind of car. And here is the engine installation in the same car. We've got some aquaplane tuning gear there, aquaplane alloy cylinder head, aquaplane inlet manifold and twin SU carburetors, so a bit slightly perkier performance, and it's even got a heater built into the top radiator hose. You can just about see that black box there. Bit more BL goodness here. Who remembers driving or owning an Austin Maxi back in the day? We've got three on the stand here. You can see the orange one and just a bit of the yellow one and a little bit of a beige one just on the right hand side there, representing different eras of Maxi. I think the early cars had a cable gear change, didn't they? I think that was a feature that was dropped fairly quickly. And here, a glorious Rolls-Royce 2025, a landaulet bodied car. You can see the roof folded back. So yeah, this was designed very much for chauffeur-driven motoring. Next up in this look at the NEC Restoration Show, a head-on view of a lovely little Riley Elf, the Riley badged version, the upmarket version of the Mini, of course, a bit like the Wolseley Hornet. Very, very nice little car. This one on an F plate, so late 1967 or early 68. Another lovely Rover P6 here, or at least it will be lovely when the restoration is completed, but it gives you a good idea of what goes on behind the front wings. There are all the front suspension mountings on the bulkhead, so you need to be very sure that rot hasn't got in there, because there's a lot of stresses put through that particular part of the car's structure when you're driving along, so you don't want any weaknesses there. Okay, we're back to Vauxhall's, another Ventura, but this is the uber rare estate car version of the Vauxhall Ventura. What a rare thing that is. Contemporary of the FE Series Victor, of course, this one on an end plate, and nice smart Ross-style wheels on this particular car as well. So yeah, I wonder how many of those are left. There can't be too many of these around either. HSF 919 is a registration. This is an Armstrong Siddeley Whitley from 1950. It's got a 6-cylinder engine and that very long bonnet, and I think this is one of the classic car loan project cars, where people get loaned the car for the space of a year, I think, and just gives you some experience of old cars. Now this is such a rarity, this FSO Polonaise, Polish built car. Really unusual to see one of these now. I do remember these back in the sort of early to mid 1980s, very much sort of motoring on a budget, but so rare to see one of these now. It's a real treat to spot this one. In fact, so much so that I actually took 2 photographs of it. And here we go, a rear 3/4 view of this 5-door hatch. There was another car being worked on by the club throughout the course of this year's NEC Restoration Show, and I'll show a photo of that one a little bit later on in this particular video, so keep watching, keep an eye out for that one. Oh, another little pre-war gem here, a 1935 Lanchester LA10, body by Mulliner. The information board says there Mulliner, of course, did the bodywork on many Lanchesters and Daimlers throughout the 1930s. There's all the information. Again, pause the video if you want to learn a bit more about this particular car. Ooh, plenty of restoration projects are around, of course, and look at this, a Series 2 Jaguar E-Type 2+2 Coupe. Someone's got their work cut out there, but I think probably 10 minutes with a bucket and a sponge will probably improve it somewhat. and there are a few modern classics dotted around as well. And here we have the wild looking Renault Avantime. What a bonkers looking car that is. Frameless door windows, just incredible car. Will Renault ever make a car like that again? I doubt it somehow. Here's a gentleman hard at work, tidying up the underbonnet area of his Austin or Morris 1800. It looks like it's got new old stock wings fitted to this particular car, but clearly a little way to go before this one will be driving down the road again. But again, great to see these working demos of cars being worked upon. That's what this show is all about. Now we're back on the Saab Club stand, and this is a real rarity. Possibly one of the rarest versions of the Saab 99 in the UK. This is a 99 GLE. Fuel-injected car. I think the wheels are those of the 99 EMS. But yeah, seriously rare car. This is a 4-door saloon. But yeah, nice to see that one. And look at this beautiful little Austin 7-box saloon of the early 1930s. Ooh, classic Allegro time here. We've got a lovely mid-blue example. In fact, this could be a British Leyland service bay. We've got the Allegro in the foreground, and behind it, the brown Morris Marina being worked upon. All 4 wheels off, jacked up and in the air. And again, very nice roof rack on the Morris. So yeah. Staying with BL, we've got a very smartly restored graphite grey metallic Mini Clubman estate. Now those wheels, those alloy wheels, I think they were standard fit on the old Mini 1100 Special, which was a limited edition brought out in the late 1970s, that kind of era. And before BL, of course, we had BMC, and this was one of the first cars of BMC, or Austin under the parentage of BMC, the Austin A30. This is actually quite an early A30, I think, and it's clearly been modified a long time ago as a drag racing car, a sprint racing car, something like that. And talking of very modified classics just for a moment, here is a closer look at that much modified 2-door Ford 100E that we saw a little bit earlier, parked next to the Mark I Mexico. Clearly many things going on with this particular car. And a classic Land Rover here. I think this is a Series 2A, I suspect. Now, what have we got going on here? Front hubs are off, or at least the brakes are, so what's going on? Bit of a brake job, maybe replacing an axle seal, something along those lines I would have thought. Back to rally cars just for a moment, and we have a DTV Castrol sponsored Chevette here. Very nice too. DTV, of course, was dealer team Vauxhall in the 1970s. The factory supported rally effort. This was on the Droop Snoot Group stand. Another classic Jowett here. Like I say, these were built in Bradford in the late 1940s and into the early 1950s. Really idiosyncratic little vehicle here with added side windows. Now we are in the barn find display area, and this poor Moggy, this dates to the early 1950s, and clearly it's been parked underneath somewhere that the local pigeons appear to roost. Yes, I think there's probably a fairly solid car under all that, but it would take some rediscovering. And another Flatrad Morgan. These aren't too common, so I was surprised to see 2 of them at this year's show. This one looks to be very original, and the old Easy Clean style wheels as well. And oh dear, times have been tough for this particular Triumph Stag. Look at the state of that corrosion, dinged in front bench roof. Oh dear, I think this one is probably a bit past viable restoration, or will someone take it on, I wonder? Who knows? But oh dear, look at it, even the hardtop is rotten. The doors are drooping, so the A-pillars presumably are in a bit of a bad way. At least the stainless steel exhaust looks in pretty good nick, and the wheels are usable, but yeah, that's looking pretty desperate. Whether someone will restore that or not, I really don't know. If you know what's going to happen to this car, let me know in the comment. Now, this, I've never ever heard of one of these based on the Mark I Fiesta. This is a Ford Healey Fiesta Saloon, And again, maybe just pause the video and read a little bit of that information board, because this is a properly rare, almost unique car, I would have thought. And yeah, really, really interesting to see that one. And we're back over in Reliance Corner, and a Reliance kitten, the four-wheel contemporary to the three-wheeler Robin, I suppose. So this one is sort of still lightweight cheap motoring, but with the wheel on the other corner. So probably a little bit more stable than the three-wheelers. Now this beauty, LG 4624, was for sale in the auction. That's a Humber 1650 saloon, and it sold for about £13,500. And well, I think that's just a stunning car for the money, to be honest. You could buy that, run it for 5 years, and still get the same money back again afterwards. And well, I said there were quite a few Range Rovers in this auction, and well, look at this stretched one. I wouldn't fancy reverse parking this particular car, but yeah, it certainly has quite an impact when you see this one driving down the road. This was nice, the big old Farina, the Vanden Plas, the 4-litre R, the Daddy. This one dates to 1967. It has a Rolls-Royce engine in there. It's not a Rolls-Royce car engine. I think originally it was designed with a military application in use, although I don't think that ever happened. But it found its way under the bonnet of this big BMC Farina. And we have another example here of the Cortina, the Crayford Cortina, in Mark V guise. Next up we have the Jensen Healey. This is quite an unusual car now. It's got a factory hardtop. It's a convertible, but here's got a factory hardtop in place. And this has a Lotus engine under its bonnet. So quite a collaboration there. Jensen Healey and Lotus. Very distinctive alloy wheels on these particular cars. I'm hoping this voiceover comes out okay, because this is a second time of recording. And here we're back on the Ford stand, and this very rare pickup. This apparently was built by apprentices at Dagenham as a bit of a factory runabout. So it's a Ford Pop with pickup body made from bits of V83W van, apparently. So yeah, what a rare survivor that is. And there were several air-cooled V-dubs around the place, so I photographed this one. A very colourful VW Type 3, the squareback or estate. These are often called the squarebacks due to the shape of the car, really, but yeah, this one was very eye-catching. Nice wheels on it as well. Another classic Ford here, and another example of the Consul Classic, this time a two-door saloon. We had that four-door left-hand drive car just a moment ago, which is parked alongside this car, and this is a two-door in blue. Very nicely preserved example. Now this is my kind of era, JYW 779, a just post-war Jaguar, probably a 2.5 litre saloon, and again in the auction area. What a lot of car for the money. I mean, do cars get much better looking than that? I think that is just beautiful. Sir William Lyons knew what he was doing. Okay, we are back to Abingdon's finest now, and we have an MGB Roadster complete with factory hardtop. And it's funny that Triumph actually had steel hardtops on their cars, whereas MG, with the MGB, these were all fiberglass. The factory hardtops were fiberglass, which at least made them a lot lighter to get on and off. But yeah, the steel ones were probably nicer. And here, another example of the Rover P5B Coupe, B for Buick, because the engine in these, the V8 engine, is derived from an old Buick design. And here we've got three interesting cars on a dealer's stand here. This bright orange machine up for $27,995 is a Fiat Gamine based on the contemporary Fiat 500. Didn't Noddy drive one of these in the books? Don't forget to subscribe if you like this kind of thing. Give the video a like. Please comment. Let me know what cars float your boat. And here we're back on the Allard stand. EBA 666 is the registration number, and it looks like a bit of a special being built here. I did put that registration number into Google Images and found photos of a different styled car still with that registration number, so clearly it's been taken off the road and is in the process of being rebodied. And we're back on the Frisky stand, and this is another example of the Frisky Sport. A very, very neat little car, still on its original registration number, which is great to see. Now, what do we have here? This is the lovely Joule-like engine, which is the 2.5 litre Daimler V8 engine. This is under the bonnet of a Daimler Dart, or the SP250 as it should be called really, but that is a beautiful engine. Edward Turner, best known perhaps for racing motorcycles pre-World War II. And we're back to the pride of ownership area, and we have this immaculate concours level Austin A35 two-door saloon. What a great looking car. That is very unusual colour. I don't think it's grey, it's more of like a greeny grey, I think. So yeah, really, really nice looking car. Another hot Ford here, a much modified Mark II Ford Cortina. And the red and gold livery is very similar to that as used on the Alan Mann racing cars in the 1960s. Mark I's and Mark II Cortinas were often seen out on track in that kind of colour scheme. So yeah, what a beauty that is. And there were a few two-wheelers around at the NEC this year, including this, which I think is a power pack assisted bicycle. There's the engine mounted over the back wheel, and yeah, it has to be road registered as well, hence the registration plate on the back. But I think that is the power pack. There are various others available as well. A couple of classic Morrises here. We have a Series 1 Morris 8 Tourer in the foreground, and in the background, of course, the Morris Minor Traveller. I think that's a fairly early Traveller. I think it's a Series 2 with a split windscreen. Very, very nice pair of cars. Classic Armstrong Siddeley's here, a nice pair here. This is the Armstrong Siddeley Star Sapphire. Very, very similar to the previous Sapphire. The grille is slightly shorter on these cars. The original Sapphire had a taller grille. This is the Star Sapphire, the updated replacement. You see VW Golfs around at some of the shows that we get to, but not so many Mark 1s that aren't GTIs. And this is a lovely three-door Golf LS on a T-plate, so about 1978 is the registration of this car. What a great condition that is. Back to modified Fords, and we have a very modified Ford 100E here. What engine are we looking at there? Whatever it is huge, and look at the size of that aluminium radiator, presumably specially built just for the job. Very, very, very impressive looking build, that one. And we've seen a few 1100s around the shows that we go to, and here we have the Riley version. This is the Riley Kestrel, based the Riley version of the AD016 with its transverse A-series engine. The engine's very similar to that fitted to the Mini. But yeah, this one looks to be quite well modified. I've never seen those wheels before. And whenever we go to VSCC events like at Lowton Park and Prescott Hill Climb, we often see cars like this, a beautiful 1930s Riley Brooklands. What a great looking car that is. And there are always quite a few Rovers at these events that we go to, and here a beautiful example of the Rover 110, the 110, the P4 series Rover here in 6-cylinder guy. It's very, very swish. Some of these had overdrive gearboxes, some of them had a gearbox with freewheel attachment. So yeah, really nice cars. And not for the shy and retiring perhaps, we have a group here of buggies, beach buggies. And yeah, what amazing looking vehicles they are. Presumably they're all VW based. I could be wrong. Certainly the one in the foreground is VW based. As for the others, I'm not quite sure, but yeah, great looking things. And we're back to classic Corsairs momentarily. The club had a huge display, really impressive display going on. And here we've got a much dismantled Crayford convertible version of the two-door Ford Corsair. So hopefully one day we'll see this one all back together again and up on the road. That would be great to see. Back to the pride of ownership area, there's that Golf in the background again, and we've got a lovely 65 Morris Minor, same here as the one I spotted in the car park, and alongside that a Renault 5 GT Turbo, and we'll have a better look at that one a little bit later on in this particular compilation. So many immaculate cars to see. And how about this? A huge Granada service barge, presumably done up as a service vehicle for a rally car, hence the huge roof rack on the top, which contains all manner of spare parts, presumably jerry cans with fuel in, spare wheels and tyres, that kind of thing. But yeah, what a great looking vehicle that is. And here's a whopper. What do we have here? Another classic Ford, registered 201 YUM. It's a 1962 Ford Fairlane 500. And that one looks very, very purposeful indeed. I bet that sounds a treat. Lots of action going on the Triumph Dolomite Club stand, and here we have a dolly brought in that's been sat under a tree for a long time, and apparently it's more solid than it actually looks, so hopefully this one is destined to go back on the road one day. And here we are back to classic Morris 8, another example of the Series E with the headlamp conversion. Again, this was a very popular aftermarket fitment. To convert your car to Lucas 7-inch headlamps gave much better lighting compared to the old slopey 6-volt lights that used to be fitted on these cars as standard. Now, Rover Group, as I've said already, were quite well represented this year. This is the Streetwise, really interesting car. There were various Rover 200s and 400s on display across the 3 halls that were operating at this particular show, and this is the Streetwise, a car that you don't see many of at all. And these don't exactly turn up very often either. This is about 1950-ish, a Reliant 3-wheeler delivery van. And how cool is that? Original registration LAY288. That must be a fantastic thing to drive. Or do you ride it? It looks very much like a motorcycle poking out the front there. 2 classic minis here. We've got the Clubman fronted 1275 GT, as all the GTs were. And of course in the foreground, the classic mini shape there. This one on a G plate from the mid-1980s. More Sporting Bears dream drives, and this Mustang sounded particularly tasty. This fastback Mustang V8 dates to 1967. Interesting array of cars in the background, some modern, some very not modern, and we've got a Cobra kit car as well. Quite a few imp-based vehicles as well, and several of them were prepared very much with historic rallying in mind, and that is the case here with this 1967 example of the classic imp. Of course, these were built up, or assembled rather, up at Linwood in Scotland, and then brought all the way back down to Coventry for finishing off. Here's a Stag showing off its 3-litre V8 engine in the auction area. Of course, these engines weren't as reliable as maybe they could be back in the 70s, so this kind of scene was not uncommon at the side of the road. They were a bit prone to overheating. I think these things have probably been sorted now after 40 odd years of development. But yeah, nice car. And look at this. This apparently was used during the filming of the Grand Prix film in the late 1960s with James Garner in it. Now, I'm not sure if this car was actually running or just parked statically somewhere. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, interesting car with a bit of a film history to it. These don't turn up too often. This is the big brother to the Comma Cob van. This is the Comma Express van. That is a seriously unusual bit of kit. I think this has been in family ownership for quite a few years, if I remember correctly, but yeah, isn't that nice? And you'll recognise the front, very similar to the contemporary Minx saloons. This one's sold. This one's clearly found a new owner at this particular event. A beautiful Jaguar XK120 fixed head coupe on very shiny chrome wire wheels. Very tasty. That reminds me, I must chase up my mate, see how he's getting on with his XK120 build. Back down to earth now with a car more in my budget. We have a very project-like Super Minx 4-door saloon. A bit of moss on the rear corners there, so it's clearly been stored somewhere for quite a while. I wonder what the future holds for this particular car. Sunbeam Alpine here, having a bit of work done on the front end, front wheel off, and I must admit I've got a bit of socket set envy after looking at that immaculate socket set on the floor there. How organised is that? If only I could be that organised. Classic hot hatches now. Of course, Ford had their XR3i version of the Escort, and Vauxhall had this, the Astra GTE. Both cars were fuel injected, of course. Real rivals back in the day. Probably more XR3i's around than Astra GTE's. So yeah, it's great to see this pair. And look at this again in the barn find area. This beautiful standard Vanguard. What a great survivor car that is. I think it probably dates to about 1950. This is a Phase 1, so one of the very first era of standard Vanguards with the narrow slatted grille and slightly different bonnet line compared to the 1A that came after. This is a bit of an unusual sight as well. Rust did for most of those that weren't wrapped around lampposts anyway. This is the MG Montego Turbo, the turbocharged MG version of your regular Austin Montego. Quite a few MG versions of Rover cars were in evidence at this event. And look at this, a bullnose Morris Cowley. Pretty sure this is the Cowley. There was also the Oxford version, which was a slightly higher standard of spec, but for a car nearly 100 years old, this looks fantastic. I love the hooter on the box on the running board as well. I'm guessing that's probably the toolbox. And staying with pre-war cars for a minute, we're back in the barn find area, one of my favourite bits of the entire show, and this is an SS2 standard, or SS cars rather. Produced these, William Lyons again, before he went over to sort of create Jaguar from SS. This car dates to 1934. Now we've got a pair of Triumph TR7s from the mid to late 1970s. The one in the background is interesting because it's got those big rubber bumper extensions, which I think are probably the extensions that were fitted to the export, to the federal spec American market cars. If I've got that wrong, please let me know in the comments, but I think that's what we're looking at there. And here, looking at here, is FBA 50. It's registered. This is another Allard special 3622cc V8 engine, a side valve V8, same engine I think as that in our V8 Pilot. That's also 3622cc. Really cool car. This one dates to 1951. And staying with Allard for a moment, we have another example, another beautiful car powered by the good old trusty V8 flathead Ford engine. This one has a drop head coupe body on it. Really, really distinctive styling, that huge front end and that waterfall sort of big curvy grille. Back to classic Vauxhalls, and another example of the Estate. Very swoopy rear roofline on these, perhaps not the most practical of shapes, not like a boxy Volvo, but arguably a lot more stylish than the Volvo. Next up in this look around the NEC show for 2024, this is a beautiful Fiat 128. We saw the Strada parked alongside it before, but this is really, really nice. Just look how clean those lines are. Really big windows, really easy to see out of. Modern car designers could do well to have a look at some of these older cars, because that is how cars should be now. And we're back on the Corsair Club stand. There's always so much going on this stand in particular. Look at all those engine parts and bits of suspension scattered across the floor, and we've got a very dismembered four-door saloon version of a Corsair there being worked upon. So yeah, always enjoy looking to see what people are up to working on their cars. Now, got a trio of classic Simcas. We've got a couple of Simca 1000s there, but in the foreground, that's the car I want to mention. That is a really rare car. That's a coupe, the Simca 1200S Bertone Coupe. Very distinctive two-tone paint scheme, but that must be a rare car even in France, let alone here in the UK. Now we've just got a general view of the auction area. We've got a BMW O2, probably a 2002 in the foreground, Jaguar Mark II and a Lancia next to that, and a modernish Alfa Romeo alongside that. So a bit of everything there, something for all tastes, I would have thought. Oh dear, I remember this one. There's the write-up. Have a pause of the video and just have a read about that. This 1953 Lanchester 14. Oh dear, of course Lanchester by this point in time was part of Daimler, and this car is very, very similar to the Daimler Conquest. When we look at the side view, you may well reckon, oh dear, look at the state of that. Will anyone do anything with that? It's just in parlous condition. I can't help thinking this car is probably more yard arts than restoration project, but you never know. People take on all sorts of projects, but it will take some dedication to see that one ever back on the road again. Look at the Moss. I don't think Sterling Moss owned this car, but if he owned a car, that would probably be it. But look at the state of it. What an amazing sight. But I do love to see these cars dragged out of hedges and barns and lakes and things. I think it really adds to the show. And by complete contrast, we have this super shiny Rover. Now this is quite a rare car. This is a Rover 75 fitted with a Mustang V8 engine. It was the MG version, but there are also several, very, very few in number, of the Rover versions built as well. And this is a very rare survivor from 2004. Back to the 1950s and a very smart, very elegant Wolseley 690 saloon. Really rare survivor, bigger engine version, bigger car to the comparable Wolseley 444, which was a contemporary of this car, if you like. Now the oldest car of all, I think, at this particular show this year is this, the 1898 Riley. and there's not much going on there. I can't see much in the way of brakes. I'm wondering if it had a transmission brake that operates on the prop shaft. That wouldn't be unknown on a car of this particular era. Now, two photos of a very rare car. You might just think it's a hot-rodded Ford Capri, but just hang on a minute. This has a 3.6 litre V8 Oldsmobile engine in it, and that is unusual. But even more unusual, this is a four-wheel drive Capri. This was sent off to Harry Ferguson, the man behind the Jensen FF, and the FF four-wheel drive system was installed into this car. So that makes it pretty much unique, and with that paint job, such a 70s time capsule. What a wonderful survivor of the era that is. Just what a great thing to see. I do like that a lot. Now here's that grey car that I pointed out a little bit earlier on. This is a Hudson that dates to 1920, and it's been bodied recently as a raceabout style. It's just to make it look a little bit more sporting, I suppose, that kind of thing. It's a Series O, apparently from 1920, and this one sold for about 12,000, I think. Lovely little Fiat Panda here. Simple designs, no fuss, no frills, just an economical, cheap to run, compact, easy to park little hatchback. And yeah, I just think these cars are way more sensible than anything that's being produced at the moment. Yes, they might be quieter and a bit safer and so on, but yeah. And what do we have here? Probably the most interesting car, I think, on the Audi stand this year, apart from an Audi 100 Coupe, which we'll look at later. This is the Audi 100 Avant. It's the Estate Quattro, the four-wheel drive version of the Avant Estate, and that has got to be an unusual car. Now, there was one of those at Bicester Heritage a little while back. And we're back for a final visit, I think, to the Frisky Club stand. Like I said before, there's always some really interesting cars on this stand, and this little thing, the Frisky 1 micro car, is just something. It looks like it's off another planet almost, very Jetson maybe, if anyone remembers that particular TV series. And here, a mighty Ford Granada Ghia Estate, a 2.8 litre car, I would imagine. And yeah, now that is a practical car. If you want to go auto jumbling, or if you have a large weekly shop, one of these would be perfect. Oh, we're back in the barn find area. Two photos now of a Chrysler 180. When did you last see one of these? Good grief, very faded paint, but I can't see much rust on it. And that would be a very worthwhile project, I think. Big brother to the Hillman Avenger in many ways. Looks a bit similar from the rear three quarters. Couple of classic VWs now, Mark I in the foreground and a Mark II rally car behind it. Now this big old lump, this is a Volvo 262 Coupe by Bertone. This was based on a two-door car and with a much lower coupe roofline grafted onto it. Quite an unusual looking thing. It's got American spec headlamps on this example. I'm not sure how many of these sold, but there's certainly a rare sight now, and this is a car I've never seen before. This is on one of the Sprigget Club stands. This is the Innocenti 950. This was based on the running gear of the Mark I Austin Healey Sprite, the old Frog Eye. This body redesign apparently was by Gear, built by OSI or Aussie in Turin. And yeah, very swish looking car. Shades of Fiat, of course, as you'd expect in the styling, and similar in some ways to the old Datsun Fairlady that occasionally pops up at some of the shows that we go to. So yeah, very nice looking car and an interesting interpretation of the old Sprite design, if you like. Now we're back in the pride of ownership area, and this is a beautiful TVR Grand Tourer, fully restored. It dates to 1961, and you can see the old BMC B-Series engine sat proudly within that fiberglass body shell, but in beautiful, beautiful condition. Look at those huge long copper water pipes there. Back to classic Fords and another Sierra Cosworth, this one a beautiful example in white, and it's one of the RS 500, so this is one of they made far fewer of these compared to your regular Sierra Cosworth, so this really is the top of the tree for a road-going version. And a classic Mini here, we have a Morris Mini Cooper S, various modifications, quite a jazzy paint job, and yeah, you can see the exterior door hinges and slidey door windows, which tells us this is a Mark I, judging by the grille as well on the front. But yeah, that looks like a bit of a giggle. You can see some Bond bugs in the background there as well. Okay, we're on the Lancia stand now, Y10 alongside. In the foreground we've got the Lancia Beta Coupe on the W plate, so about 1980, 81, somewhere around about there. These things rusted terribly back in the day, and it really killed Lancia's reputation here in the UK, and it never really recovered, I don't think. This is nice, very, very nice indeed. A Porsche 356C Coupe. This one's been done up, looks like it could compete in sort of the Carrera Panamericana, the American road races in the 1950s and the 1960s. That's what that one reminds me of. And this is a real beauty. I actually spoke to the new owners of this car just after the auction finished for this. This is a Renault Juva Catra Estate from 1955, all 845cc of it. What a great little car. That is so original. Look at the original paint. Beautiful little car. And also in the auction area, another example of the Rover SD1 Vitesse. The vast majority of preserved SD1s seem to be the sporty Vitesses, which is perhaps understandable. This is an Irish registered car, judging by the plate on the back there. Again, quite a few Range Rovers there. You can just see down the side sharing the same engine. Okay, partially built, we have this bright pink, very eye-catching Ford Model T. I believe this belongs to a teenage girl who's always wanted a Model T and bought this and is in the process of building this up. So good luck to her, and hopefully this will be on the road very, very soon. Now I think this one featured in a video I did at the NEC in 2023, but what a rare car that is. This is a Honda 1300 Coupe from 1972. Quite an advanced car in many ways, and probably the only one here in the UK. That's got to be unusual. Nice wheels on it as well. Here's a beautifully repainted MGB Roadster body shell. Is this one of the new heritage shells, or is it a restored original? I wonder. I do not know, but either way, it's in beautiful condition, just waiting for its 1800cc engine to be popped back in and get up and running again. Now, I often wonder what happens to cars that feature on programmes such as Car SOS, and happily this Riley is going strong, a 2.5 litre Riley RMF. Yeah, very, very nice too. You can see the pale blue badge on the radiator that tells us this has got the 2.5 as opposed to the 1.5 litre engine that many RMs have. And talking of lovely cars, we have this Alfa Romeo Spider from the late 1980s. Now we're back over in Barn Find Corner, and this was actually, I could almost see myself in this. This is a 1952 Austin Princess, a bit of a project. Looks like aluminium body panels. Now what the structure is like behind those panels I don't know, but if it's alright, that would make a really fun thing to bomb around in. It was about just under £3,000 I think the asking price on that one. Now Capris, we have here a Capri 280 with the rear wheels removed. The 280 Brooklands was the last of the classic Ford Capris really, with the 2.8 litre V6 engine. You can see the twin exhaust pipes there, and they always sound really, really nice. Now a couple of older Fiats here. We've got a Panda being worked on in the background. In the foreground, this is the little Cinquecento Sporting with its rear wheels off, maybe a bit of a brake job going on there, who knows. Interesting little cars. I remember working with someone who bought one of these new and the clutch pedal snapped off on it, so maybe they weren't the strongest of things. Okay, Ford P100. Now this has been modified. It's got a stretched rear bed on it, this pickup. It's got a 2.9 litre V6 engine. It's built in South Africa and spent its early years, this example, in Portugal apparently. So yeah, maybe that explains why it survived so well. Nice hot, warm, dry climate. Back with classic Alphas, there's that lovely little truck in the background again. I do like that one. And in the foreground, a part restored Alfa Romeo Giulia SS. A very, very swish looking little car. Just look at the style of that front end and the wraparound screen. Yeah, really, really nice looking car. Now, here's a Jensen, a bit of a project here, a couple of weekends work here. Jensen FF, the four-wheel drive Jensen. Sister car, of course, to the Interceptor. This one I've seen for sale on and off here and there for quite a while now. I think it sold for about 20,000 in the auction, so maybe it's gone off to a new home now, maybe it'll be restored. Now here's a rarity. This isn't a Ford Pop. This COU 680 the reg. This is a 1938 Ford 7W, the 10 horse car. And look at that very distinctive grille. It's not the same as a pop. These were only built in 37 and 1938. It has those 3 vertical apertures in the grille. And the good old Morris Minor 1000, they don't seem to turn up quite as often as they used to at many of the classic car shows that we go to. This is on a G plate, this particular Moggy 1000. Looks like a really clean example. And it's got the plaque for this year's Drive It Day on the front as well. So we'll have to decide what we're going to do on Drive It Day as well. Now look at this, not just a Leyland Princess, this is the Wolseley 1822 version. And not one, but 2 of the Wolseley Princesses. This is a rare sight indeed. The brown car in the background is another Wolseley as well. So you can see the Wolseley style grille and the illuminated badge grafted onto the front there. Now, classic Jaguar here. Of course, it's an XK. Now, the bonnet is off on this particular car, but I'm guessing, judging by those really big bumpers and so on, this, I think, is an XK 140. So it was the middle rate, one of the XKs. He had the 120 before and then later the 150. But I'm sure that's the 140. Okay, now there was a bit of a talk going on about some of the idiosyncrasies of the Citroën DS when I took this particular photo. The rear wing has been removed. They're really quick and easy to remove actually, because you have to take them off to get the back wheel off. And you've just got one nut at the back that you free off, and that releases the whole panel. Bit more classic Ford action now with this beautiful brown Ford Granada Mark I on period alloy wheels. A great looking bit of kit, very swish, pop-up sunroof and vinyl roof. So very swish 1970s style there, and a slightly younger brother alongside it. Another classic Panda here. This is the 4x4, the 4-wheel drive, slightly raised up version of the Panda, and these have a real good following now. Apparently, by all accounts, these are really good in snow. Nice and light, good 4-wheel drive system, tyres that aren't too wide, so yeah, that would probably go where many cars wouldn't. Lot number 117 in the auction was this beautiful Morris Mini pickup of the 1960s, and this was in superb condition. So many of them have been modified and chopped around with big wheels and silly engines, but this one looked really original, and I do like that a lot. And how about this? We've got a bit of an information sheet there, so again pause the video. An Austin 1800 VLT1G, the registration. This one competed on the London to Sydney Marathon in '68 and the London to Mexico World Cup Rally in 1970. Good year that was. But yeah, interesting car. Great that it survived. And like I say, there were a lot of Rover Group products there at this particular NEC show. And here we've got examples of the ZR, the MG ZR, which was like the MG version of the 200 series hatchback. Bit of work going on this one. You've got a jack underneath the side of it there. Yeah, good stuff. And here, another example of the Mark, this is sort of a contemporary of the Mark III, but this is the Clubman Mini, offering some improved engine accessibility, and it's running cosmic alloy wheels in this case. So that looks quite a sharp looking car, quite a rare colour. What colour is that? Let me know in the comments what that is. And also looking brown, but for different reasons, is this 4-door Austin A30 Saloon. Wow, someone loves this car. That's great. So much going on there. I don't really know where to start, so I think I'll just let the photo do all the talking. And we're back to Series E Morrises. This is a rare 2-door Morris Series E Tourer, and that has the original lamps. I've mentioned a couple of times now about these Lucas headlamp conversions that were popular in the 50s, but this has the original slopey headlight lenses and the old 6-volt lighting, and I do think they actually look quite cute on the original lamps. Now, this is one of those cars that used to appear and you probably wouldn't give a second glance to just sort of 15 years ago or so, but now they've all seemed to have disappeared. This is a Kia Pride. When did you last see one of these out and about? Really great to see this one being looked after, and there must be hardly any of these left now. And these sort of things get run into the ground as well. This is an immaculately preserved Ford Escort era van. Is this the Escort 55 van? A close on here, look at it, the Lancia Fulvia HF. These were super popular as rally cars even when they were new, and even now in historic rallying. You can see a few rally related stickers in the rear window there. But yeah, a really sharp looking car, front wheel drive, little V4 engine hung out the front, left hand drive in this case. And we've seen a few 1800s already. We've seen the rally car, and we've seen one in pieces being worked on, and this is the Ute. the utility or pickup version. This was an Australia only vehicle, bodied in Australia, and presumably someone has shipped this one back to the UK in more recent times. So that's a properly rare thing, that is. And yeah, super practical. And we're on the Daimler stand again, and we've just got a bit of a general view here. We've got a V8 250, the Mark II based V8 saloon in the foreground, and the SP 250 Dart with its bonnet raised just over the way there, but very, very nice. And we had a look at that engine just a few photographs ago. Now these two were really interesting. A couple of low light Morris Minors, about 1950, yep. And amazingly, these belong to the same chap, and they are consecutive chassis numbers, so one followed the other down a production line. How incredible is that those two survive together, and they should always stay together as well. Okay, MZ9152, this beauty here is a Riley RMD, a 2.5 litre car, open top drop head. This one dates to 1950. We've got an RM saloon alongside it for comparison. But yeah, what a glamorous looking car. That is really, really nice. And here we have a good old BMC Farina. This is the Wolseley 1660 with the 1622C engine. This was the replacement for the Wolseley 1560, which had a slightly smaller 1489cc engine. Yeah, I had one of these. It's a great old thing to tool around in. We've got a couple of classic Italian cars here. We've got a Lancia Delta Integrale in the foreground. In the background, an Alfa Saloon of 1968. Back to classic Daimlers again. There's that lovely oldie in the background there, but in the foreground, this is an unusual thing. This is a Daimler Empress, Hooper-bodied 6-cylinder car, pre-selector gearbox, Wilson pre-selector, and this one dates to 1950, but very swoopy, very eye-catching styling these Hooper-bodied cars. And this is pretty eye-catching as well. This is one of the Lister modified, the wide-bodied XJSs. It's a bit of a barn find, this one. It's a bit tatty cosmetically, so presumably it's due for a bit of fettling anytime soon, but imagine finding one of those in a garage somewhere. What an incredible car that is. Oh, the good old Messerschmitt 3-wheeler bubble car here. There's a white one in the background as well. And is that a trailer or something? I'm not quite sure what that is alongside. Is it like a little delivery vehicle for use on an allotment somewhere or something? I'm not quite sure what that is. But yeah, interesting scenes. Nice MG Magnet here showing off its B-series engine and twin carburetors. It's got the bigger back window, so this is a fairly late one, ZB, and also there was the two-tone Veritone, which had the large rear wraparound window as well. So this is a fairly late example of the breed, and was replaced by one of the Farina-shaped magnets. Now this is an incredible Daimler DE27 limousine. I really like this. It dates to 1939, and amazingly, the guide price for this in the auction was 15 to 20,000. There was no reserve, and it sold for just £3,938. So just under £4,000 it sold for, and the estimate was 15 to 20. Good heavens. Okay, here we go. A few more classic Range Rovers. I promise I won't show all of them because they all look fairly similar to each other, but this is just a representative photo of just one of the many classic Range Rovers that were on display and up for sale in the auction area over the 3-day weekend. And here we are back on the FSO stand. The FSO Polonaise that I mentioned before being worked on live throughout the course of the long weekend. Did it all get bolted back together? Did it drive off the stand? I'm not quite sure what the ultimate objective was for the weekend, but yeah, great to see these live demonstrations. A couple of photos now of a lovely old Ford Transit camper, this one on an F plate, so probably late 67 or early 1968. Really nicely restored example of this classic camper van, and it would be perfect for going to a steam rally, staying over at a show perhaps. Really, really nice. And there's a quick peek inside the back of this really nice example. How cool is that? Camping, real 1960s, early 1970s style camping there, and in fantastic condition. To get that to that condition must have taken forever. Okay, we're back over on the standard club stand. We've seen some of the cars already, and this little beauty is based on the standard Big 9. This is a swallow-bodied Big 9. Swallow again, responsible for the SS2 and so on, and eventually became Jaguar. Swallow coach building was set up by William Lyons and William Walmsley. Back over in the auction, this MGA Roadster sold quite well, I think. A beautiful example in Old English white. We saw the MG Montego Turbo in the background, and here is the Metro that was parked just alongside it. There were at least two of these MG Metros present, one early, one late. This has the very distinctive pepper pot alloy wheels on it, and Mum's Metro also had those fitted to it. She had one years and years and years ago, a W Reg car, and those wheels were on it. Now, if you've seen the Crew Heritage videos that I did in 2023, you might remember this car turning up, a Renault 5 Gordini. The owner drove up from Stratford-upon-Avon just to come and visit one of these Crew Heritage meets that we go to, one of these morning meets, and he came up in this car. So it's really cool to see it here at the NEC with those very distinctive alloy wheels. And here we are on the Sunbeam Alpine Owners Club stand, and we have two examples of the Alpine. Red car in the foreground with its roof down, and the green car in the background with the factory hardtop in place. Back to some more BL spannering. Here is the Marina, the 1700cc Marina, the four-door Marina with that nice roof rack that I mentioned before. The grille appears to be perched on the top of it, out of harm's way. So what was the job? What was going on here? Was it a brake job or a transmission job? I'm not quite sure. Okay, another imp derivative here. This is the Singer Chamois, and again, like the other imps that we've seen already, looks to be in rally car spec. And how much fun does that look? And again, a lovely period roof rack. These things must be really in demand now, these old roof racks. Classic Cavalier time here, and this is one of the rare open-top convertible versions of the Vauxhall Cavalier of the 1980s. You don't see these all too often now. And a couple of classic minis here, both Mark 1s and both Austins with the wavy, the very distinctive wavy Austin grille, both beautifully restored and up for sale. And presumably they've gone off to new homes now. And in the background there is a replica Lamborghini Countach, just showing what variety of cars you get at these events. And here we've got a matching pair pretty much, of split window VW campers, and in the background you can just see an orange and white bay window camper. The bay era cars or campers replaced these split window campers in the 1960s. And we saw that much modified sprint racing bright yellow A30, so I thought I have to include a standard one as well. And this beauty, still its original registration and original plates. Presumably it still has the original 803cc engine under its bonnet. Lovely little car. And more Marina action. This is probably one of the oldest Marina coupes that are still around. Occasionally you see the saloons or the estates, but these coupes, they're very few and far between. And this is, like I said, this is quite an early one with the earlier style front end. There was a bit of a revision, and a phase 2 came out as the 1970s rolled along. And we're back to Roots Group here with a 1965 Hillman Super Minx Estate. What a great looking original car that is. And it's interesting how the fog lights have been set into the grille. I've never seen that before on one of these cars before, so whoever did that has done a very neat job. Back to the old ADO 16s, the 1100s, BMC's favourite, and we've got two Wolseley badged versions of the 1100 here, and again one of them has got a period roof rack. They do seem to be all the rage now. I'll have to dust down mine, I think. There's one in the garage which I must dig out, maybe put on the standard 8, should I do that? Anyway, here we go. We're on the Piranha Owners Club here, and this is a Piranha Capri, the V8 powered version of the Mark I Ford Capri, on some particularly tasty looking wide Ross style wheels there. So that's a very purposeful car, and I bet that sounds fantastic. And while we're on the Piranha Club stand, here we have a V8 powered version of the Mark I Ford Granada Complete with body coloured vinyl roof, no less. Very swish. Great car. I mean, how many of these were built? I can't imagine there were many built, and there must be very few of them around now. And this is one of my favourite cars of the 1970s, the E9 Coupe by BMW. This is the 3-litre CSL, the 3-litre straight 6 powered car on the original Alpina alloy wheels. What a stunning car that is. Very elegant, not fussy, just right. Okay, two classic Jaguar-based cars here, if you like. These two are actually related. We've got an S-Type, a much modified S-Type on the right, and next to it, a slightly later Daimler Sovereign, which was the Daimler-badged version of the Jaguar 420. So the S-Type was 3.4 or 3.8, and the car alongside was 4.2. Ah, the Ford V8 Pilot. I'm glad to see one of those there. This was in the auction. I don't think it sold. I saw it up for sale after the auction had finished. So this is very similar to our own car, although of course this one is black and ours is green. But yeah, these are really cool cars. And we're back on the Riley Club stand. There's that Riley Elf in the background, and here we have a slightly modified Riley 1.5, a twin carb sporty version of the Wolseley 1500. This one's been debumpered. It's got some Lucas lamps and a roll cage, so maybe it does a bit of club rallying, this particular car. Quick release bonnet pins as well. And we're back again at the standard club stand, and look at this beauty. This is a real unusual car. There's a bit of information at the top right there. The standard Flying 20 of 1937. Wow, how has that survived? Classic Vauxhall time again. We've had some of the slightly later Victors, and here we have the Vauxhall Victor FD series, the four-door saloon in grey. Bit of a work in progress, this Mark I Capri, but with the rear quarter cut away, it does give you an idea of how these cars were pieced back together, or pieced together originally rather, in the Ford factory. So it's a bit of work to see this one back on the road, but hopefully it'll happen. Looks like it's got a new boot floor, new rear inner wings, so it is being pieced back together. Now, I mentioned this car briefly before on the Audi stand. This is an incredible looking car. I think the Audi 100 Coupe. One of the videos I did at Hopley House Farm Shop Meet last year in 2023, one of these just popped her up, and I've never seen it before and I've never seen it since, but yeah, it was great to chat to the owner of that one. And here a couple of rare Opels. In the foreground, an Opel Manta Berlinetta, the fastback hatchback version of the Opel Manta, and alongside that their predecessor, the A-Type Manta SR. Almost done, so if you've stuck with me this long, thank you very much for following everything. Please think about subscribing to the channel and giving the video a like. Your comments are always welcome. When I saw this MGB GT, I thought Dad was there, because this is so similar to his car. It's in Harvest Gold with those Minolite style wheels, so yeah, it's almost identical to Dad's. And alongside it is that Primrose Yellow or something similar Roadster, very, very nice too. And another rally prepared Hillman Imp, very, very smart too, again with the period roof rack. I must stop looking at period roof racks, but I just like the shape of them. Okay, just a general view now of the Sirocco Club stand, the Sirocco Register. We've got examples of Mark I and Mark II VW Sirocco there, and in the background, just to the right, an Audi Quattro. And here's an unusual car that I spotted in the auction. I thought I must take a photograph of that one. This is a Talbot Avenger, a 1600 special saloon. This one sold for about just over £4,700 all in, I think. So that looked like a pretty good buy for someone. I mean, you're not going to bump into too many of those at a show, that's for sure. We're back in Citroën world here, and we have a much dismantled green 2CV in the background alongside its chassis, and in the foreground the Citroën Diane, which I think originally the idea was that the Diane would replace the 2CV, but it didn't really happen. I think they're sold alongside each other more. Yeah, a bit of work going on at the back of that one. And how about this? We've had a bit of classic camper action before, and here we have a Toyota Hiace camper. Really beautiful condition, this one. Interesting wheels on it as well, they look nice. But yeah, I wonder what parts are like to find for this particular vehicle. Must be a lot easier to restore a Transit than one of these, I'm sure of that. And again, a couple of examples of the lovely Austin JE40 pedal cars of the 1950s and 1960s. These were made for quite a long time, certainly way longer than the Austin Devon car that they were based upon. Another little classic Simca. We saw the Simca club stand just a little while ago, and that beautiful Bertone Coupe. We've got another example here of the rear engine Simca 1000. This one was up for sale. It's got some really natty alloy wheels on this one and some big Lucas lamps, and the matte black bonnet, very similar to the sort of thing that you'd see on rally cars throughout the 70s. And here, a VDP, a Van den Plas 1500, the Allegro based Van den Plas. This one is a regular at some of the morning meets we have around here, and here some of the interior had been removed and the headlining was in the process of being replaced when I took this particular photograph, so hopefully it all went back together okay and it made it back home again. And if you fancy a restoration project, how about this E-Type in highlighter pen yellow with red primer bonnet? Bit of work to do there, by gum. But it'd be worth the effort. It's a nice fixed head coupe. The bonnet is Series 1, so yeah, that would be nice, but there's a bit of work ahead for someone there. And staying with classic Jaguars, this one was all up and running, and I think the asking price is around about 10,000 for this Series 1 XJ6 with the manual overdrive gearbox. So that would be a very nice car indeed. And I mentioned the racing Pumas before. We saw the blue metallic example, and this was on the far end of the same row of cars. This one in bright white. I thought I'd photograph this one because normally I only ever see them in blue, so to see this really bright white one was just a bit more unusual, so it's great to see that. And there's a Corsair in the background as well. And this is a very muscular looking Marques with a huge tilt forward bonnet, giving excellent engine accessibility, actually very, very reminiscent of the Jaguar E-Type that we were looking at just a few seconds ago. But yeah, incredible car, fiberglass body, so yeah, really, these probably go really well with that lightweight body. And here is that Renault 5 GT Turbo that I mentioned before in the pride of ownership area. This one is a real beauty. This was the road-going Renault 5 Turbo. Of course, you had the Turbo 2s with the big engine behind the front seats, designed very much with Group B rallying in mind, but this one was definitely a road car. And a Sierra that isn't a Cosworth, so that's a rare thing. This is the XR 4x4, so it's a four-wheel drive Sierra with V6 power in the front. And this one looks to be very, very clean as well, especially in white. That shows up any mark, a car painted white, so this one looked to be in really straight condition. And the last Corsair that we'll see in this particular collection is this, probably a running restoration four-door saloon. Still got a few more to go, and here we have a Gordon Keeble. These magnificent cars, didn't make many of these, powered by a 5.4 litre Chevrolet V8, although this one has been upgraded with an electric motor. And to round out this video, looking at the Practical Classics Classic Car and Restoration Show for 2024, we have the slightly tired interior of a very restoration project, Austin A40 Somerset. Bit of work there for someone. Okay, well that is it. All 350 photographs and over 400 cars featured in this particular video. So thank you so much for watching this one. It took a little while to put it together, but I hope you found it of interest. Please like, subscribe, all that kind of thing. Have a look around the rest of the channel before you disappear. Time for a cup of tea now, so I'm going to go. Thank you and see you again soon. Bye bye.